Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. It's a pleasure to welcome you on today's Understanding the APM's Qualification webinars with hints and tips hosted by our friend here, Raymond Stadnik. My name is Michael Thomas. I'm the Business Development Coordinator here at APM, and I'll be sort of co-hosting today's session. So what I'll do is I'll also start to obviously bring in and introduce our main speaker for today. So we actually have Raymond Stadnik. So Raymond actually has an extensive career overall. So not only is he sort of an APM fellow with ourselves directly, but he's also an author of our PFQ and PMQ study guides, and he's actually an APM mentor himself. So it's actually sort of brilliant to obviously welcome Raymond on today. Not only does he obviously have additional 30 years experience outside of course, helping us with the study guides and the fellow, being a fellow with us, but he's also got an extensive career within sort of developing competency frameworks, individual coaching, training provision, development of assessment practices, and much more. So thank you for your time today, Raymond.
Thank you for that introduction, Michael, and thank you to the APM for inviting me along for this webinar this afternoon. Welcome, everyone. The positioning of APM PMQ on the pathway then, as you see in that kind of centre point between the fundamentals qualification and the project professional qualification. The way I sort of distinguish between these is thinking that the fundamentals qualification is about learning the language. The project professional qualification is about showing that you can actually apply what you've learned on the PMQ. So it's assessed through an actual case study simulation, so to speak, and it's a live assessment. So we can see then that the PMQ sits quite nicely in the middle of these two sort of areas. Now, it's not a prerequisite to the PMQ that you should have the fundamentals, but I'll talk a little bit later about situations where actually the PFQ might be a good idea for you. It's all about experience. If you're coming into project management with very little experience, coming into PMQ can be a little daunting. And so coming into the PFQ first in learning that language can sometimes ease that shock, if you like, of coming into something that's as broad as the PMQ. So I want to talk about some of these aspects of how the qualifications interact with each other, and of course particularly talk about the PMQ. I mean, there may be a webinar, if webinars like this is something that the audience value, then there's the consideration of perhaps doing other webinars on some of the other qualifications as well. As the PMQ is described, those wishing to gain a broad level of project management experience. So this aspect of being within projects, working in projects, being around projects, being involved in projects. Now, there's something that is particularly special that I certainly found in way back in taking this, was the breadth, and you're not only getting the breadth, but you're getting the depth as well into a number of sort of areas. And certainly I had never been exposed to these areas in my normal kind of role in delivering quite small projects. And I wasn't involved in a lot of these things, but found them really interesting, found them really vital to my understanding of actually delivering the project. I themed this webinar as inside, and it's great to see all the things that you're looking for, because if you are interested in PMQ, you can go on the APM website and you can see a load of information there about it. But what I wanted to do, again, your interactions there are really really great to see. What I wanted to do was give you underneath the surface, and obviously give you that opportunity to ask questions about that. But what I also wanted to do was just let you see, enlighten you on some of the information that may not be directly available. And again, give you the opportunity to to answer questions then. The four sort of areas then I want to look at is, okay, so what is it all about inside the qualification? How is it structured? How does it relate to other qualifications outside normal project management areas and aspects like that? Who are typical candidates? And I want to see, and again, it would be interesting, we might have an interaction opportunity there to see, okay, so the audience then, what stage are you at? What experience do you have? And one of the main things that I find really interesting, quite amazing actually, I mean, I've been involved in a whole wide range of different types of qualifications in different areas and so on. And what you tend to find is qualifications almost have a segment of the population that is most interested, has the experience in that area, and so they will do that qualification. One of the things I find amazing about the PMQ is that it attracts such a wide variety of people from a wide variety of industries, wide variety of experience. And I could see situations where on training courses there could be someone who has never seen a project in their life before, sitting next to someone who has experience of delivering some major projects, and then both get the same amount of value out of the experience, and then subsequently the qualification. And I find that quite surprising, and I find that a really thrilling thing about the qualification and working with the qualification and helping people understand the qualification a little bit better. So what is it? Levels? Who's involved? I want to look at study planning. One of the things I found was, as I was studying for lots of qualifications when I was younger, that I would, and I can remember one qualification I was studying for where I studied for 41 hours non-stop before actually taking the exam. Yeah, I was young, and I certainly couldn't even consider anything like that at all. And I realised that actually it shouldn't be like this. This is a horrendous, stressful experience. And what I started to realise is there's techniques, there's tips, there's things you can do that can make the whole thing better. And also understanding the material that's available. This material is freely available. The examiners publish and construct all this material. Yet I would not really incorporate that particularly into my plans for studying for the qualifications. And so I realised very quickly that planning was the key, and there needed to be some plans put in place that didn't mean I was staying up for 41 hours solid and then going and sitting the exam and basically collapsing in a heap when the exam was finished and sleeping for the next 5 days. So inside what then? So the PMQ, now the APM use what's called the Scottish Credit Qualifications framework, and the PMQ is at level 7. So let me just highlight what that means. This would be at the same level as an HNC, or would be at the same level of the first year at a bachelor's degree. It covers all, now that's a big statement, it covers all aspects of project management. And this is where I got most value. Because in my sort of situation, there was sort of holes, there was gaps. Now, the problem with that was I didn't realise that there was gaps there. And so in learning what I needed to learn to get the qualification, it really filled in a lot of these gaps. Suddenly, things became clear. Things that I battled with, brick walls that I came up with. And remember, my experience at that time, it was quite limited. So basically, if I came up against a brick wall, I kind of just bounced off it and took the flack that came with having to do that. It opened up this window of the world, as I said in my introduction, and really did give me real focus on these particular elements. The other thing that I really learned was this aspect about how the elements interact with each other. So one or two of you wanted to look at sort of coverage, and this is quite a good, hopefully this is quite a good way of just explaining the extent of the qualification coverage. So what I've got here then is, we've got our day-to-day business as usual business operations. So that is all the functional areas of any business, from the HR departments to the finance departments, procurement departments, and so on. And they are all working away day to day. Now, the rationale for projects then, if we think about the organisation as a whole, the rationale for projects then is, of course, the business environment and factors in the environment impacting the organisation. Change, in other words. And we've got, changes in legislation, technology, and all of these aspects, all influencing our organisation. And so what our organisation is seeking to do then is change. Go from state A, eventually to state B, and now be in a different form. Projects, of course, then support the actual activity that creates the change and then allows the future state to emerge. These projects range in their complexity and value and size. So we may have just that business as usual. We may have functional departments carrying out projects, a few £1,000s, but they are time constrained, they are budgetary constrained, and they have a quality of output required. And so, in effect, they have the characteristics of being a project, but we may not necessarily, as an organisation, need to apply a great extent of project management to these projects. That's opposed to the more complex projects, which then need a greater intensity of project management, and all the way up to these large capital projects. So this is where the PMQ and the knowledge required for the PMQ has this breadth to it, where we can actually learn techniques that range from, can be used within business as usual, the £50,000 project, all the way up to several millions, billions in fact, in large capital projects. The same techniques would be used, just to a greater or lesser extent related to the type of project. A key thing when I'm asking people, could you kind of, do you want to do the qualification? They say, well, it's a lot of work, a lot of stuff there. What I want to show you now really is, well, first of all, I agree that there's a lot of stuff there. So always, when there's a lot of stuff, what I naturally do, again, one of the things I learned very early on in my career was breaking things down into these smaller units. And so what I found was breaking it down into these three areas then was the best way to handle it. Most structures now in developing knowledge around the PMQ will actually then do this. So we've got early subject areas, initiating the project. Again, some of these areas I had never come across, but they were very useful for me in the future. Things like the business case, understanding portfolio management, and then of course project planning and some of the aspects that were there. I knew a few areas there, and then of course project delivery. I was doing a lot of these things: schedule, resource management, and estimating. So I was involved in a lot of these, so felt quite a lot of comfort in these. But one of the key things that I saw was a thread through all of this, and that was actually the people skills that's covered, and the extent of the people skills that are covered. It wasn't really something that occurred to me in project management. I mean, I don't know why, But if I was interested in the technical aspects of projects, the structural aspects of project. It didn't really occur to me that actually the people aspects of project could have such an impact on the success of the project. I think one of the things I find, as I said a moment ago about the PMQ and the variety of experience of candidate that attends, I have seen situations, courses where all four of these people, apprentice, the early career person, future member experience, are all sitting on the same course and actually get the same value, albeit different value, but they all get the same value from what they've learned. So the apprentice PMQ has now become an established part of the apprenticeships, and so we have that there. I mentioned the early career situation, and if you have done the PMQ, it's an excellent start. Remember, it's not a prerequisite for the PMQ, but certainly you are by far several steps forward from someone who's going into the PMQ without having that PFQ certification. You've learned the language, you know the language, you're going to go into the PMQ with that degree of familiarity already. So it's a real step forward. The future membership now. I don't know if any of you are an existing member at the moment, because so you won't require this route, but sometimes it's not really appreciated that the value of the PMQ as far as complementing your experience for application for membership. And this is the full MAPM. So you having the full membership, then you can use these post-nominals after your name, MAPM. And your application will be needs to be some sort of knowledge base. Now, it doesn't have to be the PMQ, but the PMQ is a good is absolutely you immediately qualify on that basis if you have the PMQ, whereas other qualifications may need to be considered more thoroughly. But if you have the PMQ, that ticks that box immediately, and then perhaps the 3.5 years experience then. And you can present that and be ready for membership. I saw myself in the experienced category, really. When I look back on what I did, I never had the opportunity to do any qualifications related to project management at that point. And I suppose there was only really one main UK qualification available. But I went on that with some I thought some experience and saw a whole load of stuff that complemented that experience. And let's have a look at these two routes then. I want to tell you a little bit about them. Now, I want to start with the self-study route. It can be seen as a little bit daunting, and certainly, I didn't self-study for the APMP as it was, but I have self-studied for a lot of qualifications a lot since then, and it's about the material that exists already, and professional bodies, and the APM is very much like this. They want to make the qualifications readily available. They want people to access them who may not have the opportunity to go through a training provider. And they want those who don't have that opportunity, can't afford to purchase a course. They want these people to be able to have access to the exam, the qualification, just as much as anybody else. And I think this is absolutely terrific. And they provide, in effect, the material to enable someone to do that. The difficulty that people tend to have is that they end up with so much material and so many fragmented pieces of material that they find it very difficult to actually put all these together. And so the starting point then is really from a focal, if you can find a focal point for self-study, and then start to add the fragmented material into that, then you're starting to build up a solid unit of study then. And the key aspect here is, if you're doing self-study, you need to plan, and you need to have a great plan in place. You can't ignore the fact that you've got to live your life at the same time as studying for the exam. And this is the big problem. Life kind of takes over. Well, life does, but work also takes over. Now, you may have, maybe, hopefully you've got a better employer than I had. You may have an employer that actually, although they may not want to fund it for you, they are happy to give you some study leave and leave for the exam. Now that's useful. So that's like a great compromise. It's a 50-50. You pay for it, and they'll give you some study leave, or the other way around. They pay for it, but you've got to kind of study it in your own time. So that's good. But regardless, there's some really cost-effective ways that you can build up your self-study plan. I would advise the first port of call is the study guide. The study guide gives you, well, the main text for the course, as it were, if you're going through, and probably that study text will form similar material to those provided to you by accredited providers. And some of the accredited providers will use the study guide perhaps instead of their own material, or in addition to their own material. And so this gives you then the text to study. It also gives you, in the current PMQ study guide, there's also examples of questions to check your knowledge, and all the references that you need to really successfully study for the exam. The APM website has 5 key supporting documents that you can download and use immediately. Things like sample papers, there are sample questions, guidance notes, little tips on exam techniques, and a key area here is the syllabus. And I want to talk about the syllabus in a moment. Now, an underused resource, which is, well, could be used if you were with a provider or self-study, but it's a really underused resource, I find, particularly for those studying for the qualifications, is the APM community. One of the things I found about getting more involved in APM and more involved in the people who are associated with APM is there are so many people around you who are willing to help. People in all areas of their career. I mean, I would consider that I'm now in the latter stages of my career, and so I have more time. When I was in the early stage, of course, I didn't really have time I was struggling to help myself, and had very little time to take to help anyone else. Unfortunately, now it's different. I feel I'm now trying to give as much as I can back to the community that supported and helped me through my career. And I give back in the form of things like this, and writing the study guide, and being involved in qualifications development and aspects like that. So the APM community are there. I guarantee you put a query into the APM community and you will get lots of stuff back. And it's quite common that people will ask about questions, ask about answers, and there'll be lots of people out there who will be able to fire in some help to you. Now, you might look at all this and think, no, it's just it's too much. It is hard work. You do need to plan, and you do need to really commit to it. You may feel no. And of course, your organisation may decide that, well, it's valuable enough for you, we're going to fund it. And so you go through an accredited provider. By far, this is giving you the choice of how you study, when you study. You're then studying with other people, and in effect, training providers have their own kind of community in effect, their own people that will help each other. And so you're now sitting within that great wall of experience in qualifications and training. There are about 5 ways you see there, from distance learning, blended learning, and so on. And there's about 100 accredited training providers at the moment that you can choose from. Now, if you think you've got 100 providers, you've got all these sort of permutations of different choices, how do you kind of wade yourself through all of that? And that was always the problem, is, you know, how do we kind of get to training providers? How do we find out what they do? And how do we know their courses when, and so on? And there's a great device on the APM website, which is the online course search. And you can key in your parameters, filter out all of your aspects there, and you can just get the next courses that are coming up. And of course, you can see the prices of them, and you can get a link and go straight to their website. So that's a terrific resource to use. And so, yeah, that's available to you. Now, I mentioned one of the supporting resources, the syllabus. Now, I have handed out many syllabuses to potential candidates. I've tried to present the value in the syllabus, and they open it and they flick through it and, oh, very interesting, loads of stuff and loads of words and so on, and they pack it into the back of the folder, and that's it. They don't take it out again. And that's a shame, because there's lots and lots of value in the syllabus. So the syllabus can help you then start your planning. Now, the way the study guide presents the syllabus is presents the syllabus, but it also provides what's called a study guide planner. Now, you don't particularly need the study guide to develop something like this, but what this does then is it looks at the subject areas, which are all in the blue range that you see there. And if you see, you might hopefully maybe make that out okay, but you can see that the different phases of the life cycle, the project life cycle, concept, definition, deployment, transition, and so on. And you can see how the project phases. And you can see all the subject matter then between these 3 sort of areas. Initiating the project, obviously that falls over the concept phase, and then the planning of the project, and then delivery of the project towards the end. And so we can see all these things there. Now, where this, you'll not be able to make them out in that slide, but there's little tick boxes there. And so the combination then of the syllabus, and what the syllabus does is give you the learning outcomes. And the learning outcomes then are these 11 boxes down the left-hand side of the study planner. So this is now you starting to form the basis of an effective plan for taking the qualification and the exam. You've got 16, and I'll talk about the number of questions and answers and so on in a minute, but basically you've got 11 learning outcomes. So 11 separate areas. Leadership, for example, understanding structures, communication, scope management, risk management, quality management. So the learning outcomes all fall in these sort of areas. And so what we can see here then is, and of course, the aspect of helping people be ready for exam is, I would hate this, and I'm sure every training provider out there would hate this, if a candidate left their course and said, yeah, the course was okay, but I would say it was a course about how to pass an exam rather than a course about project management. That's the worst form of feedback. That I think I'm sure any training providers would agree with that. And so what we see then is that, no, we're trying to get away from this. You're learning project management. You're learning project management. And of course, that's the white areas, the subjects, 20 subjects but of course they've got to be related to the exam, because that's where you're going to sit. So the 20 subjects then are connected to the various learning outcomes. And what we could start to anticipate then is, okay, I have 11 learning outcomes, so I at least now know there's going to be at least 11 of the questions. I know what the learning outcomes will be, and there'll be several learning outcomes that will be then maybe more than one question will be asked for these learning outcomes. So you can see now that, okay, so I'm starting to get an idea, and you can see how this could be manageable now. And yeah, there's a plan developing, and the components of the plan are developing. So we're getting away from this kind of fragmented nature of loads of different material, telling me this, telling me that, telling me the next thing. And what we're doing then is we're focusing on key elements that are going to help us plan towards success in the exam. So the syllabus then, I think, is one of the most valuable pieces of information. What I always say is you should be going into your PMQ exam with no surprises. And so where do you kind of, how do you avoid these surprises, as it were? Well, you avoid them by understanding the assessment criteria that each of the learning outcomes contains. That's just over about 70 of these assessment criteria. The assessment criteria then form the basis of questions, because if we look at an assessment criteria, an example of an assessment criteria, explain the stages of a risk management process. So that's an assessment criteria. That's what you're going to be measuring. Do you know what the stages are of a risk management process? Okay. Now, if you were the examiner and I said to you, write a question to test that assessment criteria, what would the question be? Yeah, name 3 stages in a risk management process. So we can prepare for that, we can learn what these are, and so when we get to the exam, guess what? Here comes the question, 3 stages in a risk management process. And so studying and understanding project management, you will use these things as soon as you leave the course to delve into projects that you manage. Studying for the exam and getting exam success, that's a different plan. So that's different value you're getting from the whole qualification setup. And you're getting this internationally recognized qualification with potentially implications on your salary and your future project management positions and your future qualifications and so on. So there should be no surprises if you tackle it the right way, understand the elements of this material. That's the key to it. Understand what this material is providing for you. It's not giving you the answers, but of course, if you're using a study guide or the training provider's text material, then both these things will help you. So you should be able to look at each of these assessment criteria, go to the study guide, accredited provider's text, and say, yeah, stages of the risk management process. There's the stages of the risk management process, 1, 2, 3, 4. And it should be as open and connected as that. Now, as far as the exam is concerned, so it lasts for 3 hours and 15 minutes. If, however, you're a Prince 2 practitioner, then the exam for you is 2 hours and 15 minutes. Okay? And you need to, in that 3 hours and 15 minutes, you need to answer 16 questions out of any 10. Okay? So you're given 16 questions in a paper, and yeah, it's 10. So really, you have about, there's 15 minutes reading time, but no one's kind of, watching you saying, you can use that time to do anything you want. regarding the exam, of course. So you've got 3 hours and 15 minutes. If you did take the 15 minutes reading time, then you'd have 3 hours to do the exam, which would mean you've got 18 minutes to answer a question. Each question has 5 equally marked parts to it, and I'll show you that in a moment. So that means you've got about 18 minutes to answer a full question. You would find that that's not a lot of time. And so you've got to be specific in your answers. This is referred to in sort of assessment terms as a short answer format exam. So you're not writing an essay, you're not introducing a subject in risk management, very important to a business. If they didn't have risk management, projects would not typically be successful. So you wouldn't write anything like that. You would go straight in and say the first stage of a risk management process is to identify the risks. Get a couple of marks for that. Okay, what you've got to do now is say, well, okay, and a piece of advice here is I always say is think of the who, what, where, why, when. And so you'd be required to support that answer. You've given the answer, stage of risk management process, risk identification. And so what you would have to do to support that answer is who, what, where, why, when. Well, who does it? When does it happen? What did they do? And now you've got substance for the answer. Who, what, where, why, when. I mean, you're not going to use them all, of course, but the difficulty is candidates come up with the answer, but then have difficulty supporting it. Either they're taking too long to write about it, or they just can't bring the thoughts into their head. The who, what, where, why, when route is good for just generating ideas. Can I say who it is? Can I say? And so it avoids candidates missing some good, obvious information. The most frustrating, so the pass mark for it is 55%. The most frustrating mark is 54%, 53%. You would rather get, well, thinking about all the exams I've done, I'd rather get 20%, because I'd realise then is I have really mucked this up big time, and I've got a lot of work to do for the reset. But getting 54, I think, must be the most frustrating result, and that could be because of just 2 or 3 sentences here and there that you just could have written that could have just tipped you over that edge. Which could be who, why, where, you didn't mention where in the life cycle this activity happens, or you didn't mention who was involved in that activity. And that could have just given you that little bit of extra support for your answer, which then would have helped overall. So that's the exam paper. I want to just show you typically a question. With the Prince 2 exam, 2-hour exam, you would have 10 questions available and you'd answer any 8 questions. So any of you who are live Prince 2 practitioners, then you'll get a reduced time and a reduced number of questions. Sometimes I've had Prince 2 practitioners say, look, I tell you what, I just want to do the 3-hour exam. Because the syllabus areas, if you've got a Prince 2 qualification, you know areas that are covered by Prince 2. You've got knowledge in these areas. The problem is that if you do the 2-hour exam, that these knowledge areas will not be in your exam. And so I've had Prince 2 practitioners say, you know what, I know it's an hour less, but I really want these areas to come up. I can really answer questions on a lot of these areas. So sometimes Prince 2 practitioner will just opt for the 3-hour exam because it's covering stuff that they know and they've already been examined on. So if you are a Prince 2 practitioner, look into it. The syllabuses are very clear. If you download the syllabuses, you'll see the difference between them, and then make your mind up and make a decision. You might think on the face of it that would be a daft decision to opt for a 3-hour exam when there's a 2-hour available, but it just might help you actually more. I want to just take a quick look at the question and how the questions are made up. And so the questions all follow the same sort of format. Questions might ask you for the differences between things, to describe, explain things. Describe and explain are probably the most common questions, question type, of what they call command verbs. There is only one at the moment, one interpretation type of question where you're given data and you've got to interpret it. There's no calculations at the moment, but remember, keep watching. When you do eventually do the qualification, because as I mentioned earlier, things may change and be updated and so on for that. And so that interpreter, as it is actually around the area of earned value. And you're given indexes, you're given an outline of a project performance, and you're asked to comment on it. Here's what the questions typically then look like, and they're all the same structure of question. We have a part A and a part B. Part A is worth 20 marks, and it's asking you for 2 things. Part B, 30 marks, asking you for 3 things. And most of the explain and describe questions all follow that format. And so you can see, I mentioned, so the learning outcome there, understand risk and issue management within a project. And of course, the assessment criteria that the candidate should be able to explain the steps in the risk management process. Assessment criteria, candidates should understand, explain the benefits of risk management. So again, how would you, if you were an examiner, how would you test that? You would test it with these questions. So this means, as a candidate, we can target the specific knowledge we need for the exam. We can have a good understanding of just what the examiners are looking for here in answers, and hopefully have good exam success for that. Now, I would say one of the biggest changes that's happened to the exam is the introduction of online exams. So your exam will be totally online. There's no paper options available, only in exceptional circumstances, and that would of course need to be previewed by the APM. So you need to check on that quite closely if you need that. But there's a lot of support there, lots of detail about just how you can prepare for your exam. The APM are very supportive of everyone who wants to do this, and understand that it's maybe not a normal way. It's becoming more normal, shall we say, but there's a big appreciation there that, yeah, doing an exam is stressful enough without having to fiddle about with various aspects of technology. So there's loads of opportunities for you. There's a countdown leading up to your exam date. There's testing links sent to you, so you can test all your systems, set it all up in advance. You need 2 cameras. You need your main camera on your laptop or desktop, and you need your phone also. So you're being viewed from 2 angles. Straight on, as I am here today, and then a phone is placed in a position that will be able to view the screen and your desk position, and that will be observed. It works really, really well. I don't hear of a lot of problems. I think the biggest problem is some organisation security systems. There are some difficulties potentially there. A lot of the time, individuals who just can't get around that will often either, their organisation will either get their IT system to give them a clean laptop, and they're able to do it through a sort of more open connection. So there's various ways around even the most intensive online security. When you log in, this is how the exam is shown on the screen. And so what you see there is you see a tab. You'll see 17 tabs down the screen. The top tab, which has an eye logo on it, is the tab that you would click and you would be able to scroll up and down the questions. Now, if you are scrolling up and down the questions, and this is designed in your 15 minutes time availability. So if you're scrolling up and down the questions there, what you might find is questions where you say, I'm going to answer that one, and so you can flag it, and so you can see. Hopefully, you can make that out on the screen. But I flagged question number 8. And you'll see the flagging device at the bottom of the screenshot, just a little bit over to the right. Up at the top of the screenshot, you'll see there's a red finish button, and to the left of that is the progress monitor, and there's 10 blocks there, and as you complete a question, a block fills in. You'll also see in the middle of the screenshot the countdown timer. So it counts down from your 3 hours and 15 minutes. So time management is really essential here. And I'm sure that a lot of candidates that don't make it, they fail to manage time more than not having enough knowledge to answer the questions. And that's it. When you click on one of the tabs, the question comes up, that question comes up with a text box beneath it, and you simply type your answer into that text box.